Coming to you from his studio in downtown San Francisco, this is the Backstage Bay Area podcast. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
Hey, welcome to Backstage Bay Area. I'm Steve Roby. Thanks for being here. Today, we are diving deep into the adventurous, boundary-blurring world of avant-garde and creative jazz. Our guest today is Lisa Mezzacappa, a cornerstone of California music community, a bassist and composer who has spent over 2 decades crafting everything from ethereal chamber music to raucous, rollicking suites inspired by speculative fiction and film noir. Lisa's here to talk about her latest project, a flexible ensemble that thrives on spontaneous dialogue and creative risk-taking, and her upcoming shows at SF Jazz. Lisa joins me now. Hey, Lisa, welcome to Backstage Bay Area.
It is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Lisa, you've been a driving force in the Bay Area's experimental scene for more than 20 years. Your current ensemble, Lisa Mezzacappa Five-ish, features a who's who of longtime collaborators like saxophonist Aaron Bennett and drummer Jordan Glenn. How did this specific iteration of the group come together, and what does that ish signify for the way you all collaborate?
Well, yeah, some of us have been working together for many, many years in different contexts. In my little corner of the Bay Area jazz community, we, a lot of us work together. We kind of have cultivated a certain kind of chemistry and a way of working on each other's music and a way of composing for each other. So we tend to overlap a lot and play in each other's groups. And in that sense, it almost feels like the whole scene is your band, and at any given point, you're focusing in on one corner of it or another. But yes, Aaron and Bennett on tenor sax, and Mark Clifford, the vibes player in the band, and Jordan, the drummer, we've all played together for a while in another version of my last sextet. And then when I was thinking about starting this new project, there were some people that I'd been playing with more informally recently and knew I wanted to kind of rope into my next idea. And also people that I've been mostly playing with in improvised context, but never in like a formal band. And so I was really excited to bring Brett Carson in, who is also an incredible composer. Everyone in this band is also a composer, which is great. And also Kyle Bruckman, who's an oboe player, plays double reeds and synths, which is a very unusual combination. So Kyle is a special unicorn. And so, so we started playing together, and I was picturing this group, but I was really aware that these guys are busy and they have their own projects. And so I thought that I might have to be prepared for us sometimes being a trio, or sometimes being a sextet or a septet, or maybe a large ensemble. Or what would it sound like if the music was written so that it could be played duo or with 10 people? So I was kind of curious about that idea of the band kind of expanding and contracting. And so there was a point where I was calling it a sextet and then a quintet. And then what happened is my plans kind of slipped away from me because we became a band almost immediately, and everybody was really committed. And so now we're really a sextet called Five-ish, and we really do feel like a group, but I wasn't expecting that. I mean, this is what happened. Yeah.
That's great. I love it. In the past, your work has been deeply informed by literature and noir novels to cosmic comics. With your new album, Otherworldly, you shifted toward world building with fiction authors. What was the sound or vibe you were chasing when you began building this specific musical world?
Well, I was thinking about this kind of combination of motion and momentum, and also like texture and abstraction. Those are kind of the 2 things I was mostly thinking of when I was thinking about kind of like sci-fi landscapes and places that you've never been that you could imagine. And so all of these players are really good at making sounds that are really abstract and not like notes or grooves. But at the same time, they can also read all this music that really grooves and goes to these other places. And I was interested in kind of putting those 2 things together and exploring this kind of like terrain, like sonic terrain, like we're playing in a place, we're evoking a place that you've just never been.
Nice. I was curious, was any of it inspired by, like, say, the 50s and 60s space lounge music? I think it was the genre for that era.
In this case, no. It's funny, a lot of my music isn't really inspired by music. It's usually inspired by some other idea, like, like reading a Ursula Le Guin book around, people who live in a land that she invented, or the way that like the writer David Mitchell will go between different time periods and create these worlds. So a lot of times when music is based on these other things that kind of grab me from reading a book or going to see an art exhibit. And that's what I wind up writing about instead of music that inspires me, which is just a strange thing. That's kind
interesting.
of in my practice, yeah.
Sort of like a soundtrack, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love it. The first track we're going to play on today's show is called Life is Running Out. Oh, no. This piece opens the new record and sets quite an urgent tone. Could you tell us about the composition of this track and how it introduces the listener to the landscapes of Otherworldly?
So with this one, I was interested in this idea, like life is so not linear, right? We're always kind of either internally or in the ways that we move around the world. We're always dealing with all the simultaneity. And like sometimes we're suddenly, we're talking to somebody and we're locked in with them, but there's another thing happening on the side or that you're noticing on the side that you have to pay attention to. And you could move between all of these kind of layers of things happening all at once. And so this is kind of modeled on that a little bit where we all start completely together and then different people in the group start to pull apart and do their own thing. And we're all trying to hold all these different layers together that don't always line up. And it's kind of like a game.
All right. Well, let's play it now. This is Lisa Mezzacappa Five-ish with Life is Running Out. And you're listening to Backstage Bay Area. Performing Life is Running Out. That was Lisa Mezzacappa Five-ish. It's from their album Otherworldly, which is available now. Lisa, a central part of this new record is the Biome series with titles such as Brackish and Sand Swept. When you're writing for this specific ensemble, which includes unique textures, as you were mentioning, Kyle Bruckman's oboe and synth alongside Mark Clifford's great vibraphone, how do you translate these ecological or speculative environments into specific musical instructions for your players?
Wow, that's a really great question. Well, I've been composing for a long time now, and it's really an interesting kind of corner of all the ways people compose, like whether it's symphonies or, writing rock songs or, singer-songwriters or jazz tunes. There's like an interesting way that I've sort of developed writing for improvisers. There's a really particular way to compose. So you're always trying to think about the individual and the sound that they make and the ways that they play, and you're trying to figure out how to kind of guide them to a new place. And you're guiding this band of real individuals, to their own place. It's not like a symphony where all the violinists want to play in tune and blend and sound the same. So for me, that's this really fun challenge, is like having an idea in my mind, like, oh, this piece is about this, empty, dry landscape, and then trying to figure out what that sound is for me, and then thinking about, well, how does Mark play the vibes, or what are the sounds that Aaron likes to get into when he's improvising on the sax? And that usually takes me somewhere interesting if I'm picturing the individual players. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you see music kind of visually too, as well.
I do. Yeah, very much so.
I love it. So I want to look at another standout piece from the album. This one's called The Dream, The Reality. It's nearly a 10-minute exploration that closes out the collection on the album. Was this track intended to be a final resolution to the world you created, or does it leave the door open for what comes next?
I love your question, and I would never try to answer it, because the fact that you're asking it is such that, like, I'm so honored that you're thinking that way about the record. That's perfect. It exceeds my wildest expectations that it's making you think that way. So,
okay.
So the answer is whatever you think.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let's let the music do the talking. When we return, I'll ask Lisa about her upcoming shows at the Joe Henderson Lab. But first, this is The Dream, The Reality by Lisa Mezzacappa. We just heard The Dream, the Reality by Lisa Mezzacappa Five-ish. I'm Steve Roby, and Lisa is my guest today. Lisa, you are bringing this music to the Joe Henderson Lab at SF Jazz this weekend. The room is famously intimate, with the audience practically sitting inside the ensemble. How does the energy of Otherworldly, the Otherworldly suite, change when you move it from the studio to a live setting like the lab?
Well, as improvisers, we really feed off the energy of the audience so much. And it's fantastic to play in a room that not only sounds good acoustically, but that does allow you to be really close to the listeners, because you can feel when you get quieter and more intimate in the sound world that they come closer. You can hear people kind of join the band in that kind of way as listeners. Like they're listening to the music the way you are. And none of us knows what's going to happen next sometimes in my music, which is also, I think, kind of exciting. And so I really like that idea of inviting the listener into our process and coming on this kind of journey with us and kind of exploring this terrain. And also, like a lot of these games, also my music, even though it sounds like kind of abstract and experimental, it's also really playful. A lot of it's outright funny. Because it's about kind of subverting expectations and surprise. And a lot of the times in rehearsal, we're just cackling at the places that we go based on what, my notation tells the musicians. And so I think the audience feels that too. And it's like, and a joke is only a joke if people laugh at it. So, so this idea that the music really only exists when it's received is kind of so important. And so, the audience can take us to whole new places.
How much of the set would you say is locked in? And how much are you leaving for the spontaneous chemistry of the quintet or sextet?
It's great to think about that, because when I first write music, new music, like a suite like this for one of my bands, at first we're just working on like getting the written, getting it right, getting it tight, getting it perfect.
Yeah.
But then what starts to happen is I call it like you get to this great place and been playing the music a while, and always after you record it, you get to this tight looseness. Like, at first, you're trying to get in tight, and then when you really know it, then you can start loosening up again. And so it never gets stale in that way. So we kind of know all the notes now. We know what we did on the record, and now we're all looking for a new way to surprise each other. Even though the written parts are really well executed and everything's really clear and sharp and crisp, at the same time, I totally expect and invite everyone in the band to try new things. So we're always a little bit surprised and on our toes.
All right. I love that phrase, tight looseness. That's great.
Yeah, it should always be tighter and looser. That's what I'm always kind of ranting about. Yeah.
Well, what do you want the audience to listen for or take away from these shows at the Joe Henderson Lab?
I hope that if people come to check us out because they don't know my music, I hope that they just kept a window kind of into not just me, but my whole community of musicians who are composing and leading bands as part of the jazz scene here. There's not so much visibility for what we're doing, but I feel like there's a lot of really creative, really individual voices that are making records and, writing music for bands like this that is nothing you've ever hear anywhere else, nothing you've heard before. And so I think we have a really special little thing going on in the Bay Area if people are willing to take a chance on, maybe a name that they don't know or someone who's not on a big label, but the music is really at a very high level and it's made with love.
All right. That's the fun part of seeing shows at Joe Henderson Lab. Sometimes people don't know what they're going to, but they walk away surprised. I love seeing that on their faces as the show is over. They're just smiling ear to ear. And just let me remind our listeners, you can catch Lisa Mezzacappa Five-ish performing live at the Joe Henderson Lab in San Francisco on Sunday, February 22nd. There are two performances, 6 and 7:30 p.m. I highly recommend getting there early. The doors open at a half hour before the show starts, and they start lining up early too. So if you want a good seat, it's general admission, so you can kind of sit wherever you want. But get there early, get in line, and tickets are available now at sfjazz.org. For more information on the new album and upcoming dates, visit lisamezzacappa.com, and you can find links to everything we discussed on the podcast today in the show notes that you'll find right below this podcast. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us and sharing these new worlds with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And I could just mention that this record is actually the last record in a series of releases I did this year. I have 12 releases in 12 months. So this is kind of capping that, which is really exciting. So this concert is the celebration of the final release in that project. And it's on my record label on Bandcamp called Queen Bee Records.
How do you do it? 12 records in 12 months.
It takes a village.
Lisa, thank you again. I
Thank you.
really enjoyed the conversation.
So did I. Thanks a lot.
Backstage Bay Area will return after these exciting messages.
Are you a jazz musician preparing for a run in San Francisco? The Backstage Bay Area podcast wants to help tell your story. We are currently filling our guest lineup with the artists keeping the jazz scene alive. If you have dates booked at a local club or concert hall, let's get you on the mic to discuss your latest work. Connect with us directly. Send an email to backstage.sfbay@gmail.com. Just let us know when you'll be playing in San Francisco. That's backstage.sfbay@gmail.com.
Backstage Bay Area is dedicated to keeping jazz alive in the 415 by spotlighting the artists, presenters, and venues that sustain this music. The most meaningful way to support local jazz is simple. Show up, buy a ticket, and experience the music live. Visit BackstageBayArea.com and explore our upcoming concerts section, featuring both a weekly guide and a weekend guide to jazz shows across the region, plus the latest concert news. Thank you for keeping jazz alive in the 415.
You've been listening to the Backstage Bay Area podcast. Visit us on the web at BackstageBayArea.com. And don't forget to keep jazz alive in the 415.